Well, Kwasi Kwarteng, our Chancellor, delivered a blinder of a budget speech, although it wasn't called a budget, it was called a fiscal event. I'm on a mission to retire, so has our Chancellor torpedoed my retirement plans? Well, hello and welcome. I'm Dr. D. I'm 61 years old and I'm trying to get myself organised to retire. And then on Friday, our Chancellor of the Exchequer made his statement in the House of Commons, throwing out the rule book on tax. So I've got a financial plan in place based on a certain set of assumptions. And some of those assumptions are related to how the stock market will do, how the bond market will do, what inflation will do. Has the Chancellor torpedoed those plans? So the tax changes that he has said he's going to make are going to affect me. So there's income tax to start with. Well, there was already a planned reduction in income tax at the basic rate of 1 pence that was supposed to take place in April 2024. That's now being brought forward 1 year to April next year. I think that will be welcomed by most people. And of course, it's only any benefit to you if you do indeed pay tax at the basic rate, which I think is anything over about £12,000. The next cut he made was on stamp duty. At the moment, you start paying stamp duty on a property that is over £125,000. Well, he's doubled that threshold, so you will only start paying stamp duty when you buy a property over £250,000. But it gets better than that if you're a first-time buyer, where the threshold for paying stamp duty on your first house now goes up to £425,000. Most youngsters that I know, and I've got 3 youngsters and they would all like to buy a house, there's no way any of them would be able to, let alone all 3, any of them would be able to afford to buy a house at £425,000. So I'm not quite sure why he's done that, unless it's to benefit the better off. Now that rise only takes place in England and Northern Ireland. And I suppose for me personally, if I had been thinking about downsizing, then yeah, it would be a saving. Now the next one on my list is really not going to benefit me. Scrapping the cap that applies to bankers' bonuses. If you believe what you read from the economists, the actual tax take on that was minimal. And in fact, what happened to these well-paid bankers, instead of receiving their money in bonuses, they are now receiving that same amount of money as a wage. But look, it ain't going to affect me. And the next thing on Mr. Kwarteng's list was corporation tax. Now, at the moment, businesses pay corporation tax at a rate of 19%. So that is a tax that limited companies, such as the little company that I've got, would pay on our profit. Now, all those changes that he announced might want to make you go and cry into your beer. But the good news there is that he's also scrapped proposed increases in beer and wine duty. Now, the theory behind reducing all these taxes is to try and put more money or keep more money in people's pockets. The theory has it that if you're well off and you've got more money, you'll spend it. By spending the money at the top of the tree, the top of the triangle, that money will trickle down through the economy and that we'll all feel more wealthy. I think this was tried probably by Ronald Reagan. I guess that was the 80s, and it didn't really work then. So is it going to work now? Now, one of the concerns with making all these tax cuts is going to mean that indeed people might feel they've got more money in their pocket and will be more willing to go and spend it. But that runs a risk of stoking inflation. And if inflation increases further, then interest rates are going to have to increase further. And if interest rates increase more, the government is going to have to pay more to borrow the money that they said they need to borrow for all of these tax cuts. And then that starts to make the benefit of the tax cuts be nullified, because the government's having to pay more in interest to the people they've borrowed the money from, which means they've got less in the public finances to finance the public services, which in turn would tend to suggest that sometime in the future taxes will have to go up again, or there'll have to be huge public sector financing cuts to finance the government debt created by the government reductions in tax they've given us now, that they've done in an attempt to stimulate the economy. And I think that's a real risk, and that's something we've seen in the bond markets particularly, and something that's driven the plunge in the value of the pound. So it's all very complicated. What I want to know is, how is it going to affect me and my financial planning for my retirement? Well, I do have a plan, and I am going to need to go back into that. I'm going to need to challenge that now. All in all, I think the Chancellor has made a massive political statement, as well as a major economic one. His proposals are going to lead to a monumental change in the tax take the government was expecting, and it is a bit concerning that he's published these proposals without the Office for Budget Responsibility, who are the guardians of the public finance, have not been invited to make their own forecasts on the basis of these changes. And of course that makes him look somewhat irresponsible, and that can undermine his overall economic credibility, in fact the whole nation's economic credibility, and that I find a concern. So will these measures affect me? The reduction in national insurance, I'll feel some benefit from. I will feel some benefit from the reduction in the lower band of income tax, so that's for sure. And I think my business will feel the benefit as a result of, or cancelling of, the increase in corporation tax. Although I welcome those on a personal level, I still worry about the impact that these measures are going to have on public services, our economy in general, particularly inflation, the impact that will have on the value of the pound. I'm also very concerned that it's not a progressive set of proposals. It seems to be benefiting the more well-off rather than the less well-off. And I don't think that's a good thing. I do have a real concern this could lead to social unrest and inequality in our society. We need more equality, not less. So has the Chancellor torpedoed my retirement plan? I'm like a ship sailing off on a journey. I might be hitting some heavy weather, but that might mean that I've got to change course. But it's not going to change my destination. So I'll have to go and crunch the numbers, which is going to take a little bit of time, and maybe I'll let you know what comes of that. And of course, if you've got any comments or wanted to say anything about how you think these measures are going to impact you, ask those questions in the comments below. On the happy note that I don't feel torpedoed, it's time to sign off. Before I go, if you've enjoyed this, it would help me a lot if you liked and subscribed. Thank you very much. See you next time.